Welcome to Delta Flies Outdoors. Tonight we have a special guest with us, Mr. John Eberhart. How are you, Mr. John?
Hey, I'm doing very well. I just got back in the house from hunting this evening.
How that?
Doing good.
I know we talked the other night. You were going towards, I think, Kansas to hunt. You said.
I was going where?
I know the other night you said something, and I may have misunderstood. Like when we talked, you were near Kansas the other night. Was you hunting, out of state or where you're from?
No, I don't go out of state. I live in Michigan, and I don't go out of state until our gun season opens, and that doesn't open until November 15th.
Okay.
I don't gun hunt, so I go to Kansas November 15th to bow hunt.
Okay, that was glad you clarified that. I had misunderstood.
Okay, no big deal.
You said you just got in from hunting, so we'll dive right into that. Tell us what you look for when you go into an area, because I know you do some videos with, bed hunting and scent control. So why don't you give us the lowdown of what it is that makes you pick a spot when you pick it?
Well, every year, I go into season with probably 40 or 50 locations, and this year my early season hunting locations, which were, like oak trees, red oaks, white oaks. There's some apple trees that I hunt at that, in timber that used to be pastures 60 years ago. Now they're all timber with understory and security cover, and then also some scrape areas, some primary scrape areas. So every year I go into season with about half of my locations are early season locations, and about half of them are rut phase locations. And then I have some other secondary locations that I hunt during the October lull. And this year, the acorn mast, oak mast, was not very good. So all of my early season locations, as far as oaks with acorns, were not that hot. I had a couple decent ones, maybe two, where I've got 3 or 4 bur oaks on the edge of standing corn, and I've been seeing bucks at those every time, but nothing I wanted to shoot. And then I've got a couple that had apples, but the other 3 or 4 apple trees that I have ready to hunt, they didn't produce apples, so they didn't get hunted. But I've had a really good early season. Primarily what I've been doing is rattling. I've been in, either swamps, or I've been in timber with understory that butts up to standing corn, and I've rattled 3 pretty decent bucks. They're not shooters, but 110 to 120 inch bucks out of standing corn. 2 of them came out of the standing corn. The other one was actually in the swamp, so he just came in from the swamp. 2 of them were in the evening, and the one in the swamp I rattled him in the morning. And then I've rattled in some other subordinate bucks. So early season, when if my mast and my food-bearing trees that early season mature bucks are out bedding to feeding for the most part. So if my food-bearing trees are not producing mast or fruit, then I have to change gears, and then I hunt edges of standing corn and try rattling bucks out of standing corn, which they like to bed in because it's heavy security cover, or I go in a swamp and rattle in swamps. Okay.
Touch back something with you that you said right when you started the October lull. That's one of those things, like, I guess right now where I'm at, because the other night we talked, with me being in Oklahoma, I think I've hit like a little bit of the lull, because looking at the cameras are like, even in my backyard, because I keep deer constantly. So moved into a neighborhood here out of north of Oklahoma City, and the deer are constantly in my backyard. The last 2 or 3 days, it's been nothing. Like, they're not here. So it's like, I don't know if they've hit that little, I don't know where they're at, but they're not here. And, and I know, prior places of hunting and everything, being from South Louisiana, you get a 3 to 7 day period. It's just like they vanished. Is that something that you're, like, when you say the lull, that's what you're getting at?
Yeah. Right now, I consider this the October lull. Michigan, for instance, has more bow hunters than any other state by about 60,000. We have 60,000 more bow hunters than the number 2 state, which is Pennsylvania. And so we have a ton of bow hunting pressure. And the October lull is basically a period of time when, in my opinion anyway, the mature bucks that I'm trying to kill, they pretty much stay buried in the security cover. You know, they're either bedded in standing corn or they're bedded back deeper into the swamp. And typically, you know, in this type of a pressured area, the mature bucks are usually pretty nocturnal before the season even opens because there's so much preseason scouting and preseason location preparation happening. And, you know, those mature bucks,
they know exactly.
You know, what?
I said they know exactly what's going on. It went from nobody there to, like, hey, people are in here again. Like, you know.
And the mature bucks have been shot at before. I think statistically of my 33 Michigan bucks, 28 of them had wounds on them.
Oh, wow.
And of my 20 out-of-state bucks, Pope and Young bucks, none of them had ever been touched. So in a state with heavy pressure, as soon as there is any influx of human activity, they just take on nocturnal habits because they know that gig. They've been left alone all summer long, maybe a little bit of spring turkey hunting, but, you know, from January through the rest of the summer, there hasn't been any human activity, and they know what that influx of human activity means. So, you know, they turn nocturnal. But the October lull, you know, the deer still move, but they move after dark.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things other than just hunting pressure that have to do with the October lull. Probably the main thing is their security cover, at least in my state, I don't know about Oklahoma, all the foliage is starting to drop. So, you know, places where there's ground brush and red brush and briars and autumn olive and weeds, you know, as it starts to get colder and gets windier, you know, all the leaves and all the foliage starts to drop. So the mature deer and the older does even, you know, that security cover that they've had all summer is kind of disappearing. So they're moving back into the heavier security cover areas in the swamps and into the standing corn. I know you guys probably only have standing corn. I don't know if you have Milo or not. But Milo is very similar to standing corn,
yes,
although it doesn't get as tall. But deer bed in Milo. But in Michigan, we don't have Milo, but we have lots of corn. So, you know, the bucks tend to bed in there. So during that October lull period, bucks will still move as long as they're in heavy security cover. So they will, you can possibly rattle them out of a standing cornfield out to the edge where you can get shot opportunities, or you can rattle bucks, you know, a mature buck in a bedding area. In a big bedding area, you can rattle them in close enough for a shot. So that's kind of what I've been doing because the food locations didn't pan out. I just didn't have a lot of master fruit trees that were bearing food.
Yes, sir. I know you're a big proponent with scent control, and so like when you was talking earlier, when you were talking about hunting certain rut spots, I'm trying to figure out how I want to word this. Like, you know, you got people that are big hunt the wind proponents, then you got the scent control. You don't care what the wind's doing. You're going to use your regiment, and it speaks for itself.
Wind is totally irrelevant to me. I've on my Eberhart Outdoors YouTube channel.
Yes, sir.
I've posted 4 scent control videos.
Mm-hmm.
2 of them I'm just sitting in a chair talking about it. That I don't think there's anybody, and I don't want to sound egotistical, but I feel very confident that I don't think there's anybody in the country that knows anything more about scent control and activated carbon and how you can get to a point where wind is irrelevant. I've been at that point for 20 years. The first 35 years of my hunting career, I've bow hunted 55 years. The first 35 years, I paid 100% attention to wind. and for the last 20, I paid zero attention to wind. You know, I pay zero attention to wind as far as getting winded. I am never, ever worried about getting winded by a deer. That does not happen. I know how to use scent lock. I know how to care for it. I know how to properly store it, and I know how to properly use it, and I know what to use in conjunction with it, so that wind is an irrelevant thing to me as far as getting winded. I do, however, on occasion will play the wind because mature bucks will move different directions, and you know, they'll feel more comfortable moving maybe to one of my locations in a certain wind.
Yeah.
Because they want to come in from the downwind side. So I wait for the wind when I'm in my tree. You know, I wait for the wind to be blowing to where the deer are physically coming from, because they're more comfortable coming in from downwind. I'm not worried about them winding me. So I want my wind blowing to them, because then they're comfortable. They can't smell a human, so they're going to come in. Or when I'm setting up at a primary scrape area. You know, typically a mature buck in the middle of the day during the rut phases, which in Michigan the rut phases start around late October and run through mid-November.
Mm-hmm.
Mature bucks typically during midday will scent check primary scrape areas from the downwind side. They won't physically come to the actual scrapes. They'll just skirt around the back side of it if it's got adequate security cover during daytime, and they'll just sniff it from 20 to 40 yards downwind. So I'll set up my scrape areas where typically the wind's out of the northwest in the fall during the rut. So I'll set my tree up 25 yards on the downwind, you know, on the southeast side of the scrapes, and then I'll also make a shooting lane to the south of my tree. So I've got a shot to the actual scrapes, a 25-yard shot to the actual scrapes themselves, if a buck did physically come to the scrapes to work a scrape. But I've also got a runway, and I can shoot as far as 50 yards downwind of the scrapes. So a buck can circle the downwind side and scent check it, and I will still have that shot. So when I set that tree up on the southeast side, I wait for a northwest wind to hunt that spot, because I'm not worried about a deer winding me, but he's going to scent check it from downwind, and I'll get that opportunity. Okay. And I should say some things about myself, because if you're in Oklahoma, there's probably a lot of guys that don't have a damn clue who the hell I am.
Right, that's why I was asking, you know, and then I was, you know, that's what I was fixing to do. I was like, well, you know, we should talk more of his background before, because I know who he is, but how many people, you know, and some of my listeners will, but others will be like, who's he talking to? Like, you know.
Yeah. I'm from Michigan. I've bow hunted 55 years. I am 72, almost 72 years old. I have 53 record book bucks, 33 from Michigan and 20 from out of state, because I go out of state during Michigan's gun season to continue bow hunting. So I'm strictly a bow hunter. And of the 33 Michigan book bucks, they came off 18 different properties and 10 out of 10 different counties. And one of them was a state record buck I shot in 1981. The 20 book bucks I've taken from out of state came off 14 different properties in 5 different states, and the largest one was 180 inches. So everything I've done, this is really what separates, in my opinion, what I've done from anybody else in the country. And that sounds egotistical, but it's a fact unless somebody can tell me otherwise. All the deer I've killed, all the book bucks I've shot, 53, I've only exclusively hunted public land or knock-on doors for free permission properties my entire career. I've never hunted on relatives' properties. I don't own any property. I've never paid a dime to hunt any place in my life. I've never hunted over a food plot. I've never hunted over bait. Everything has been exclusively on public land or free permission properties. And I don't think anybody else in the country can make that claim. So when you're hunting public land and free permission properties, you're always hunting against competition, and that's what I think separates me from the other guys. You know, the TV guys, I don't even pay attention to anything they do. I don't think they're very good hunters because they're hunting pristine conditions. You know, deer walk out into wide open food plots and pick cornfields and short hay fields, you know, and they shoot them. So, you know, they're hunting where there's absolutely zero competition. And if there's no competition, you can't call yourself a good hunter. You just can't. If you can't kill deer amongst competition, obviously anybody can. If anybody has the facilities as far as the money, anybody could have a big piece of property and not let anybody else hunt it, and just grow bucks until, you know, put food plots in and make bedding areas and grow bucks until, you know, there's a half a dozen 4 and 5 and 6 year old bucks on the property, and, you know, they've never been shot at before when they went by whoever's hunting the property. So they, you know, they're not afraid of going by humans. You know, they tolerate human odor. They tolerate a lot of things. They're very respondent to calls like you see on TV, and they'll walk out into open areas because they've had no negative consequences when they went by hunters while they're growing to the kill status. So, you know, to me, hunters on TV are a waste of time to follow and a waste of time to pay any attention to what they do, because if you're hunting pressure property, what the TV guys are doing and talking about doesn't work on pressure property.
That's what I was going to say. Something, I believe it was on Facebook, on your group there, on the saddle group, that you posted about the moon phases and TV hunters, and talking about moon phases and everything, and like you don't hunt that.
Yeah, yep.
And that's what I was gonna elaborate on next with you there. Like, you know, like moon, like you said, you don't worry about the wind per se, and like them spelling you. Then it goes into the moon phases. That's just out the window also to you, correct?
Yeah, that's very much out the window. See, the TV guys, they've got their little gift. They want to be relevant, so they put out all these, well, we only hunt during a certain moon, or we only do this, or we only do that. But in stark reality, it doesn't matter what they do or when they do it, they're going to make kills. They're going to kill mature bucks because there's so many on their properties. You take, whether it be any of the top TV shows, Tiffany, Kiski, Drury's, you know, they can sit in a shack and a little box line, and, you know, deer walk right up to their place in a food plot and they shoot them. I mean, there's just no skill to that, in my opinion. And moon phases, for instance, you know, so they can write all these little cool little books or these little notes and have 13 different phases of the season, and this 4-day period is this or this is that. They can push all that stuff and they can hunt that way because it doesn't matter what they do. They're going to make their kills. But if the moon phase is wrong, according to what a chart might say, and you're a regular hunter hunting regular competitive property, and you got a day off to hunt, you're crazy if you don't go hunt just because some prima donna TV guy says, well, you shouldn't hunt on this moon phase. That is absolutely ridiculous. And I proved the moon phase thing wrong years ago, back in the 70s. Back in the 70s, lots of people used to shine deer, and I was one of them. I used to shine deer. And one thing that I really noticed is if it was a full moon and there was no cloud cover, so it's pretty bright out, you would see deer at night, but you typically didn't see any of the more mature bucks. And I'm going back into the 70s. I haven't shined since probably 1982. But you just wouldn't see any of the bigger bucks. But if you took a full moon, you know, it's still the full moon phase, but it's cloud cover and it's raining, or it's, you know, just a heavy cloud cover and covering up the moon, so it's dark out, you'd see mature bucks. So it's still a full moon phase, but the cloud cover being dark, the deer were more comfortable moving at night. And one thing I noticed is when there was, during the rut phases, if there was a full moon at night with no cloud cover, so it was really bright at night, and the deer didn't move out in the open that well after dark, the next day, midday movements were phenomenally well. And I do a lot of all-day sits during the rut phases. So, I have kept records of all that stuff. I've written 3 bow hunting books, bow hunting pressured whitetails, precision bow hunting, bow hunting whitetails Eberhart way. I've got statistics in all of the books. I've got P&Y entry ratios per every state in the country, hunting pressure per absolute square mile, hunter density per absolute square mile. I take the total hunters, divide them into the land mass of the state, and come up with how many hunters there are per square mile. I take the P&Y record book bucks, divide that into how many bow hunters there are, and give you the bow hunting stats. 1 out of every 785 bow hunters in this state killed a Pope and Young buck that they actually entered into the book. So I've got all kinds of stats in my books. And I just refuse to pay any attention or think anybody that hunts regular property or public land should pay any attention to the TV guys. And this is probably the best way to put it into perspective. If you take sports icons, you take a Tom Brady, a Michael Phelps, a Mickey Mantle, I'm aging myself there a little bit, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Phil Mickelson, Tiger Woods, those guys are all sports icons. And what makes somebody a sport icon is they, in middle school or in high school, they played whatever sport they're in. And if they were really, really good and they were outstanding, they got a college scholarship to go to some college and continue playing. And then if they were super good in college compared to all the other college players, then they would get drafted into the pros. And then if they were really, really outstanding in the pros, they became sports icons. They had really good history of being better than all of the other pros. But the unique thing about that, when you're a sports icon, you've competed against hundreds of thousands of people to get to that icon status. And you've competed with them on the same exact baseball diamonds, football fields, golf courses, swimming pools. You've competed against hundreds of thousands of people on the same exact playing fields. TV guys don't compete against anybody. They've got pristine grounds, no competition, and they've got a gazillion mature bucks on them. I'm being facetious, obviously. They've just got lots of mature bucks. So, of course, they're going to kill their mature bucks every year. And their kids kill the mature bucks as soon as they pick up a weapon, and so do their wives. So, are they experts also? So people need to keep that in mind. And when you're hunting regular properties, you can't pay attention to the TV guys because the stuff that they're doing won't work where you hunt.
I've never heard it broke down that way with the icon thing, but that's the truth. That's a good way to put it. Something to clarify something when you're talking about shining deer, that's legal in Michigan. That, from my understanding, that they can shine deer like that at night. Correct?
You can shine deer up to the 1st of November, and you can only shine deer till 11 o'clock at night. Okay.
See, like I said, I was born and raised in South Louisiana, and it is illegal. It is considered animal harassment. Any time of the night, night. If it's it could be getting dark at 5:30 and you could be 5:50, it's considered animal harassment. So I just want to clarify that with a few of the, with listeners, so that, because a lot of people see, I didn't know that it was legal in, the way you just said it, the exact phrasing of it, until probably a year and a half ago, listening to the Deer Hunter podcast.
Yeah.
And they were talking about it on there, and I'm like, holy crap, man, you could, they'll impound all your stuff where I'm from.
Well, there's lots of states where it's legal, but they're, once the rut starts, they don't want you shining at all. So from November 1 on, there's no shining at all. And even prior to that, you can't shine past 11 o'clock at night. But I haven't shined deer since probably 1982.
Yes.
So, I definitely don't do that anymore, but I'm just saying, back in the 70s, it was a big deal. It was not uncommon to have three people shining the same field at the same time.
Oh, wow. All right, another thing that I don't, maybe I've never seen you discuss this, and you may have, a lot of people will go with what the feeding charts of, prime movement's going to be at this time to this time. What is you have much belief or disbelief in that, or deal with it much?
What charts? I didn't catch that. What kind of chart?
No, talking like a feeding chart, major movement's going to be, major feeding time's going to be 11 to 1 today, or like minor's going to be 2 to 3 a.m.
Of course I don't go by those charts. You don't know what the weather's going to be a month out from now. How can you go by a feeding chart when you have no concept of what the weather's going to be?
Okay.
I've been seeing bucks every single evening I've hunted this year. I've seen bucks. Tonight, because of the weather, we had a front coming in. I didn't see a deer. And I talked to two guys at the gas station tonight when I was coming home. They didn't see a deer tonight either, and it's the first night they haven't seen a deer. So you can't put out a freaking feeding chart, and say, a month from now you're going to feed at this point in time on this particular day. That's ridiculous.
I figured that was where we were going with that, but I just wanted to ask because I haven't ever got to discuss that with you or seen it, anybody discuss it with you. So I wanted to see your opinion on it because I know people that, you got, like any other thing, you got people that'll swear by it, and it's like, yeah, I just don't see how it's accurate, and that's my opinion's like yours.
There's no way it's accurate.
Yeah.
You can't put out a chart and foresee the future, what the weather's going to be. Weather affects deer movements, whether they're feeding or not.
Yeah, the barometric pressure.
Windy, and they did not move. And a month ago, if you put out a feeding chart, you'd have no clue what the weather was going to be tonight.
Yes,
so
sir.
There's no way you'd know what that chart should say on that particular day.
Exactly, and that's what I figured you were going to say with leading up to the other questions, that we'd asked and answered. That was then just because you got somebody of your stature that I wanted to ask, that way people can hear it from somebody that's, like you said, 55, 53, or is it 53 you've killed, record book bucks? So,
well, I've killed 53 bucks. I mean, I've shot lots, way more bucks than that, but 53 of them that made books.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of people that like you said, name somebody else that's done that on the type of land you've done it on, So
most of the TV guys, I mean, you get TV guys that have been around for 20 years, they kill 5 or 6 bucks. They go to different states, they kill 5 or 6 bucks a year. So they do it, but I put no credence in what they do whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly.
To me, what the TV prima donnas kill is totally meaningless. Because if you can't kill deer under competition, like on public land, when I talk about free permission properties, they just give permission to everybody that asks. So it's just like on public land,
right?
So and what I do, the reason that, in my opinion, that I've been so successful is everything I do revolves around security cover. When I go in and I'm scouting, I pretend, okay, everybody on these properties that I hunt is trying to kill me. That's what I pretend. Everybody is trying to kill me. I'm pretending I'm the deer, okay? So where are the only places on these properties that I will possibly stand up and move during daylight hours? And it always has to revolve around security cover. Mature bucks, as they get older and they've been shot at or they've been wounded, they become more cautious. And to be more cautious, it revolves around security cover. So, I have a standing rule when I'm hunting public land, especially public, not so much to knock on doors, but on public in Michigan, if I can stand up and I can walk to a location standing up, I don't care if there's 50 rubs there and 30 scrapes. I will not set it up and hunt it because I will have competition. There's 30, 40 bow hunters in every square mile here. So, on public land. So I will have competition. So I only set up locations where I have to physically cross creeks with dip boots or waders or cross something with a canoe, a lake, or, a boat. Just places where other hunters typically are not willing to put the work forth to go there. So, those are the places back in the heavy security cover where once you cross rivers and stuff, you've eliminated 95% of your competition. And that's exactly where they push the deer, during their preseason scouting and when they're hunting. Most hunters like to hunt in open timber. Well, if you're not going back in the heavy security cover, your odds of killing a mature buck in a pressured area are really pretty slim. So it's totally unlike TV guys where deer just walk out in an open field and, there's 3 big bucks out there and you shoot one. Everything I do is security cover oriented. And then there's lots of times I'll scout a piece of property that I get permission on, and I won't even hunt it because it doesn't have the type of security cover that's unaccessible by other hunters. There's nothing I can do crossing a river or going across a lake to get rid of the other hunters. So if it may have a little bit of security cover, but it's easy for other people to get into as well. So I just will abandon it. I won't even hunt it.
Okay, that's good information there, and that's what I say. Like they got one of the WMAs, the public land in North Louisiana that I hunt. You got to park and walk anywhere you go on it, and I've got an area that I've hunted off and on in it in a couple years, and I actually had a camera back there for a year probably, right? I never had another person on camera, and I was talking to the game warden, and he's like, well, dude, nobody walks that far. It was 2.2 miles back to where I was going. He's like, the guy's taking bicycles already and going that far. He's like, you're not going to see anybody. He's like, but it was true. Like, I never saw another person there. They would go about halfway back, and that was it. I could sit in what was, like you're talking about, it was kind of open, but it was so far back in there that the deer felt, hey, nobody's going to come back here. And you would see deer every set, and I had some, the mature bucks would move late, and but I mean, you'd see 7, 8, 10 does every set just moving through freely because nobody went back there. And it was, even though it was kind of still open, it was just so far back, like, and that was what made that one good. Then it's like moving here to, like talking to you the other day, moving to Oklahoma and setting up with this. I looked at an area, I'm like, where would I hunt this? And I was like, where would the average person hunt it? And I looked at this area that, yep, that's where they're going to go. Sure enough, I made my first hunt this past Saturday, and the area that I thought would have people in it had like 4 trucks parked. The area I went to, I was the only one in there. And it was like, because I looked at it the way you would, like, where could I get away from people? And it didn't look prime, so nobody messed with it. And, that was, I had it to myself. And I was like, and it wasn't crazy hard to access, but when you looked at it, it was like, they looked at it as, well, we got this really good area over here. They went to the easy hunting where, you had the oaks and everything that should be holding deer. And that's what they went to. And, there's good deer in the location I'm in. And, I've got a big mature buck on camera that I saw that I just, I haven't got them patterned. But, it's in that area, like you said, I went away from where the main pressure would be because most people are gonna look at, they're gonna go to what's eye appealing, and because they've watched so many of the TV hunts, they're gonna go to the easy access, like something simple. They don't want to put the hard work in, and if you don't put the extra steps in, it's gonna be hard to kill good quality deer.
Well, and you also have to realize, and this is really important, you have to be able to identify buck sign, whether it be rubs or scrapes or big tracks or whatever it may be. You have to be able to identify what is nighttime traffic or nighttime sign versus daytime sign. A lot of guys will go on public lands, whether in Michigan or any state, and, they'll walk through the timber because that's what they see on TV, and they'll maybe see some buck rubs or see a scrape under a tree with some low-hanging branches or under an oak with acorns. And they're like, oh, wow, well, this is a great spot. Well, if it's open timber and it's easy access for everybody else, that sign, if it was made by a mature buck, it was made at night. So you have to be able to identify and differentiate sign that a mature buck would make at night versus sign that a mature buck would make in the daytime. And basically, if he's going to make sign in the daytime, it's going to be back where there's security cover. Like you said, you're way back beyond where everybody else is going to go. So, you can see all the sign in the world is irrelevant if it's made after dark by a mature buck.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, subordinate bucks, yeah, they may come out into some open timber, you know, and walk through some open timber, and you get a shot at a 4-point or a 6-point, or possibly even a 2.5-year-old 90-inch 8-point. But when you get into your 3 and 4-year-olds, they just don't make those vulnerable movements in open timber. They hang back in the security cover. They'll go in the open timber after dark, obviously, or in open areas after dark. You know, people see scrapes along crop fields. Well, and they assume that's made in the daytime. Well, it's not. If it's made by a mature buck, it may get visited by a subordinate buck in the daytime. But if it's being visited by a mature buck, it's going to 99% odds be after dark. So it's irrelevant to hunt it. It's worthless to hunt if you're trying to kill a mature buck. You just got to be able to read sign and be able to read, okay, is this in a spot mature buck would visit this in the daytime? And typically it's nighttime. So you got to get back in the junk to find a place where mature bucks will move during daylight hours, because that's what it's all about.
So that leads me into you led into what I was wanting to ask without even me getting there. It was when to hunt certain sign, and that was what you just said. Like, you got to look at it, and know whether it was made at night or dark, daylight, to know when to hunt it. And if it's made if it's easy to locate sign, then it was probably made, easy area. It was probably made in the dark. So that's how you
Yeah, and then there's other things. You got to, certain locations are morning locations. Certain locations are evening locations. Certain locations are early season locations. Certain locations are rut phase only locations. When you've got match trees, let's say you've got some oaks on your property and they're dropping acorns this year. Okay, those are going to be early season locations, because typically by mid-October, those acorns are going to be gone. So those are before the rut phases. The acorns are going to be gone, unless you got a whole timber full of oaks. Then there's going to be acorns all year. But so if you've got oaks on your property, that's it's not only an early season location, it's also an afternoon location, because if that's a preferred food source, you can't go in there and hunt it in the morning, because you're going to be spooking deer with your entry. Whereas when you go in the afternoon, those deer are not going to be eating those acorns. They're going to be bedded someplace. They're going to come to those oaks and feed in the evening. So, when you're hunting it at a fruit tree or persimmon tree or an oak tree, and it's a preferred food source in that area, those are evening-only locations, and they're also, because they're feeding locations, they're early season locations. Now, if they continue to drop food into the rut phases, then they become rut phase locations as well as early season locations, because they're going to have a lot of doe activity, and all buck activity during the rut phases revolves around doe activity. So they can be an early season and a rut phase location, for the rut phase location. And then the rut phase locations that I have are typically back in the swamps. So, a lot of people like to keep, if they got a really nasty bedding area, a lot of people say, well, we're going to keep that as a sanctuary. That's kind of ridiculous in my opinion, because during the rut phases, especially in a pressured area, the mature bucks are going to be back in those swamps. They're going to be back in that heavy security cover, marsh grasses, cattail marshes, stuff like that. So that's where you want to be hunting. You want to be back where they're at. They're going to be back there chasing does, breeding does, and they're typically not going to break that security cover until after dark. They still stay in that security cover mode, and during the peak rut, they're going to push does back into those security cover areas that they're in estrus, and they're going to breed them in there. So all of my rut phase locations, I always prep everything. I do all my scouting during postseason. So I'm talking January, February, March, April. And usually I wait till the snow is gone. You guys don't worry about snow, because sign that's left in the snow is meaningless, because deer change their habits once they get deep snow. They They move closer to the preferred food sources. The deer season's pretty much over. So they change where they bed and move during the winter versus where they're at in the fall. So as soon as the snow melts, I do all my scouting, all my new location preparation. I go to all my old locations, clean the summer growth up from the previous summer, and usually by the end of April, I'm all done with my scouting and location preparation for the year. Now, my rut phase locations that I've got ready, the very first time I go there will be during the rut. I won't go back and visit it to see what it looks like or anything like that. I'll wait until the physical rut comes, and then I will commit to an all-day sit. When I'm back in the swamps during the rut phases, I'm in my tree an hour and a half before daylight and still. So I'm going in 2.5 hours before daylight, and by an hour and a half before daylight, I'm in my tree, settled in. So I beat the deer into the bedding area, and I don't leave until about a half an hour after dark. So I sit all day, and I wait for about a half an hour after it's dark because I want the deer to leave the bedding area, and then I get down. So I'm not spooking anything in the bedding area with my entry, and I'm not spooking anything in the bedding area with my exit. And again, I'm back in the security cover where bucks are going to be pursuing does, chasing does, breeding does, and they're comfortable doing that during daylight hours. But you have to commit to an all-day sit. And typically, you're going to have your best chances of killing a mature buck in the middle of the day between 11 and 3 o'clock. Of the 20 bucks I've shot in Michigan that have made book between November 1 and November 14th, this is an interesting statistic. So 20 of my 33 were taken between November 1 and November 14, and of those 27 were taken between 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's 35% of the bucks during that 14-day period were shot in the middle of the day, while less than 8% of my time spent on stand was during the middle of the day. So during the rut phases, I spend a lot of time hunting just mornings and just evenings. I may, out of that 14-day period, I may sit 3 or 4 days where I sit all day, so I'm hunting during the middle of the day. So while less than 8% of my time on stand was from 11 to 3, 35% of the bucks I shot that made book were from 11 to 3.
Okay.
So that midday period is a big, big, big deal.
And that's what I was going to ask. Another thing, how many times, say like your early season areas, you go hunt it, like you said, you got so many, say 30 or 40 spots. You go hunt this area, like where you were hunting today. Will you hunt it again, or you're in once and done with it, or will you hunt it a couple times? How do you do that?
Typically, I'll hunt it a couple of times. The one today that I went to, I had not been to that spot since April.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I was there was April, and they timbered a whole bunch of timber down. It totally has changed. The deer just weren't moving tonight, but they've totally changed it. There was some big pines there with a lot of undergrowth, and they took all the pines out. There was like a 50-year-old plantation of pines, and it's got a lot of heavy undergrowth. They were red pines, so they were starting to die off. Mm-hmm. So he had them timbered out. But typically, if it's a really good spot back in a bedding area, keep in mind during the rut phases, I'm not spooking anything with my entries and exits because I'm going in so early and leaving after they leave. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I could definitely hunt it a couple of times. And when I say I have 40 to 50 locations prepared or somewhat prepared, I only will hunt probably 15 of those, because my early season locations that are at oak trees or apple trees or a primary scrape area, when I go, I'll do a speed tour about a week and a half before our season opens on October 1. So sometime in late September, I'll put on all my scent lock clothing like I'm hunting, and I'll do a speed tour of all of my early season food locations.
Sorry to interrupt, but you just did a YouTube video about that speed tour.
I did, yes.
So, sorry.
And the purpose of that speed tour is, if you got locations set up at food spots, mass trees or persimmon trees or fruit trees, you don't want to waste a hunt going in there. You go in there to hunt and there's no acorns or there's no apples. You've totally wasted a hunt. So you got to do a speed tour. I do a speed tour of all my early season locations, and I'm doing them scent free just to see if they're actually dropping food, and if they are, is there any buck sign at them? So if they're dropping food, let's say I've got 10 of my 25 early season locations are dropping food, I'm going, like, when I go in late September to do my speed tour, that's like 2.5 to 3 weeks after the bucks are rubbed out. So the ones that are dropping food, if the mature bucks are using those areas, those trees, and they are feeding there should be some buck rubs in the vicinity. So I'm not only looking for food, if they do have food, I'm looking for what buck sign might be at that location, and that's going to dictate which ones of them I hunt first.
Okay, basically that answers one of the questions that I had asked earlier about knowing when to hunt an area. Like you're looking for your early food sources when they're dropping to see if the bucks are using them, and that tells you, hey, this is a hot area, I should be on it. And
exactly.
So,
yeah.
It's like it's a lot of information that you can get. Like your books, I've read one of them there, and it's like so much information in your books. So, like it just leave you like wow. And I know like in the past year I've gotten more into the scent control stuff and everything, but like just doing some of your other stuff, I've increased the amount of deer and I've seen because I've been in areas that like you said I normally wouldn't have went to in the last year or two. I was that person that went to the kind of easy area to hunt, or I'd look at the weather and be like, it's not the best, I'm not going to hunt. And that's because of what you see all the time, and mainstream media. And so opening my eyes to different things and say it's just made it so much, I haven't closed the deal on a good buck yet, but it's like I've seen way more than I would have any other way, just opening it up to see it and looking for those things. And it's really cool to see it when it really like the different people that you talk about on Facebook, when they're the stuff you've told them, their plans come to action. Like it comes and they kill these bucks, and it's like all the stuff they've.
I get so many emails now over the last 4 or 5 years because I've been pushing the scent control thing, and there's a lot of naysayers out there. They're just idiots. They don't have a clue what they're talking about. I've proven this to myself for 20 years. I've got 100 guys that I know, at least 100 guys that are kind of friends of mine. They don't pay any attention to the wind, and when you can get to the point where you don't pay attention to wind and you never get winded, you don't have to worry about deer walking down the same trail you are entering your spot or crossing your entry route and winding you. That's probably the biggest game changer there is. And for people to poo-poo something that have never done it correctly is absolutely ridiculous. I'm getting 30 to 50 emails every day. People, hunters across the country asking me for my scent control regimen because I've been pushing it so hard this year. Mm-hmm. And if anybody wants it, and that are listening to this podcast, all they got to do is email me at DEERJOHN51@gmail.com. DearJohn51@gmail.com, and just say, please send me your scent regimen. And I'm sending 30 to 50 of those every day. I've got a canned 12 documents that I've written that goes through every specific detail of how to be scent free. There's a lot of guys that have used scent lock in the past that got winded because they didn't do it right. Again, let's go back to the TV stuff. The TV guys, literally, in my opinion, I don't know how I can put this, but there's TV guys that have been sponsored by Scent Lock. over the years, over the last 20 years. And they don't have a clue what they're doing. They'll put on a scent lock jacket, they'll put on a pair of scent lock pants, and maybe a pair of scent lock gloves, and they'll wear leather boots, or they don't take care of their backpack. They'll have a logo ball cap on with their hair hanging out and their beards showing. If your face is exposed, your scent control's over. I don't care if you got a scent lock jacket and a scent lock pants on. You have to have a head cover with a drop-down face mask covering your face, everything but your eyes. You have to have a scent lock jacket. You got to have the pants, got to have the gloves, so when you touch vegetation, you're not leaving odor. And if you have a backpack, you've got to wash it in scent-free detergent very frequently, and then store everything in airtight containers as soon as it comes out of the dryer. Scent Lock does make scent lock backpacks, but if you miss any of those steps, you better pay attention to the wind. So just getting a scent lock jacket and pants and saying I'm not going to pay attention to wind, that's absolutely ridiculous. I have never seen any TV person ever that knows anything about scent control and how to put themselves in a situation where they don't have to pay attention to the wind. The sprays are absolutely a joke. It's nothing but sodium bicarbonate and water. That is not going to allow you to not pay attention to the wind. And trust me, when I paid attention to the wind for my first 35 years I bow hunted, I got to the point where I would not set up on sides of ridges. I would not set up in saddles. There was just lots of areas I literally quit setting up because of thermals and swirling winds and stuff. The wind was changing every 5 or 10 minutes, and I would always get nailed, and the deer would spook. So there was places I just quit setting up locations. And then there was also seasons. The rut phases are kind of short, and most people work. And if you get 2 days off a week, and you got these, I got this 2 great rut phase locations, and you have to pay attention to the wind, and you don't get the proper wind on the days you get off of work, you don't hunt them. There's years I didn't hunt my best locations because the wind was never correct on the days I had off of work. I don't worry about any of that anymore. I hunt where I want, when I want, and never pay attention to the wind, ever, unless I'm paying attention to how a buck moves according to the wind at specific locations.
Yeah, and like you said, like people not doing the scent control properly. Like my favorite thing is watching people they put their hunting gear on, then go get in their truck and leave. And it's like,
hey, you don't wear your hunting gear in your truck,
right?
You don't wear the boots you're going to hunt in at the gas station. You don't. I see guys wearing scent lock in restaurants all the time. You don't do that. That's just, you don't do that. That's improperly using scent lock. There's a proper way to use it, and if you don't do everything properly, you don't deabsorb it correctly, you don't store it correctly, you don't use it correctly, you don't use the right things in conjunction with it to stay scent free, it's not going to work. Right. You got to be a detail-oriented person, and there's a lot of hunters out there that are high-profile that are not detail-oriented people. They have poor hygiene, and they just are not detail-oriented, and they cannot have a scent control regimen, no matter how hard they try. So, that's the sad way of putting it, but there are people out there like that.
All right, I'm gonna lead into that with like the ozonic style. Like people talk about putting it in that style of chamber and everything. What is your take on that? Have you?
If you're hunting in a pristine area like the TV guys do, or ultra-match property, mature bucks will accept the ozone odor. An ozone machine leaves an odor.
Exactly.
People can tell me whatever the hell they want to tell me. I've used ozone machines.
They have a smell. You can smell it.
Companies send me ozone stuff. They leave a foreign odor. So when you're using an overhead ozone machine, you are, on the downwind side of you're sending a foreign odor into the woods. And if you're hunting properties like the TV guys hunt, or ultra-managed properties, deer probably don't pay attention to it because they haven't had any negative consequences until they've grown into the kill status. They're 4 or 5 years old before anybody shoots at them, so they accept all kinds of stuff. They don't spook from it. But when you're hunting in a pressured area and there's a foreign odor that's not supposed to be at the destination spot where a buck may be coming into, and he's coming in from the downwind side, odds are really, really high he's going to turn around and leave. So I would never, ever even consider using an ozone machine in Michigan. Wouldn't even think about it. And there's a extreme, I'm not going to mention his name, but I have a pretty good friend, and he was a host on one of the top 3 TV shows for at least 10 years, and he was sponsored by Ozone, and he killed 58 Pope and Young bucks using an ozone machine over his head. But every place where he was hunting and he shot these deer, it was either pay to hunt ranches and he got to hunt them for free in lieu of advertising, or they were pristine properties where there was never any competition on. So these deer accepted the ozone odor and they would come in from downwind. He owns 80 acres in Michigan. And he said when he started using an ozone machine on his property in Michigan, and it's surrounded by people that own 20s and 10s and 5s, so there's a lot of hunters in this section he's in. He said 2.5-year-old bucks would come in from downwind, and as soon as they cut that ozone odor, they'd turn around and leave. They would literally spook. 2.5-year-olds. So ozone, if you're hunting pristine property, managed stuff, or TV type stuff, yeah, ozone. Yeah, it does actually destroy the human odor molecules. No doubt about that. It does do that, but it leaves a foreign ozone odor in its trail. So, does it work on clothing? If you wanted to take regular clothing, hunting clothing, and put it in an ozone closet and get the human odor out of it, yeah, it definitely does that. It takes the human odor out of it. But as soon as you people don't understand this, you are emitting, there's over 300 different types of odor molecules emitting from a human body as long as you're breathing. That's just a fact. So you can take an ozone machine and you can take all of the odors out of it, all the human odors out of it. And if it's a permeable piece of fabric, clothing, that allows airflow in and out, you put that on, even though it's a pristine, no human odor on it whatsoever when you put it on, it doesn't take very long before your human odor molecules start to permeate through the permeable fabric. And you will be having human odor outside of the fabric again. So just because you put something on and it has no human odor on it, it's not going to take very long for your human odor to penetrate and permeate through that permeable fabric, and you'll be having your human odor on anything downwind side of it. That's what the activated carbon in scent lock does. Activated carbon actually absorbs all the odor molecules. It absorbs molecules, whether it's odor or whatever. If you take a scent lock suit and you put it outside by an apple tree, or you put it out by a pine tree, it's absorbing the molecules from whatever. It's absorbing molecules all the time. It doesn't know if you're hunting or not hunting. So when you properly are caring for an activated carbon line suit, you throw it in a dryer and you heat it up for like 40 minutes on the highest heat the dryer has. And then as soon as the dryer stops, you put it in an airtight container so it's not absorbing any odors. And then you take it out when you're physically going to go hunting. You go hunting, and then when you get back, you take it off, put it back in the airtight container. And you do that with your head cover and your gloves. And if you wash your backpack in scent-free detergent, I use Arm & Hammer hypoallergenic detergent. That's my scent-free detergent. And as soon as it comes out of the dryer, it goes in an airtight container as well, and only comes out of the airtight container when you're going to physically go hunting. There's a process to this. This is not just, some magic thing. You got to do it correctly, or it will not work.
So you can't halfway it. It's either you're all in or it won't work.
Exactly.
And,
if you did it 80%, if you did everything, you wore the head cover, you got the gloves, you got the jacket, you got the pants, but you're not taking care of your backpack properly, you're still going to get away with more. Let's say now you're 80%. That's like driving a car with 3 tires instead of 4. Okay, you can still drive a car with 3 tires. It just doesn't drive as well. So you're probably going to get away with a little bit more. A deer might think you're a little farther away than you actually are. But when you do it all and you do it all correctly and you're driving the car with all 4 tires, you can get away with everything. I've done it for 20 years, and the people that say I haven't, I don't know why they even question that, because I have deer downwind of me all the time, almost every day. When deer come from, even if they come from upwind and I don't shoot them and they go to my downwind side, they don't spook then either. The other night I had deer around me 360 degrees all night eating acorns. So, it's just an automatic for me. I just don't get winded. I'm not saying I never get picked once in a blue moon, maybe once or twice a season. Man, maybe once a season on average I'll get picked where a deer will actually see me, especially once the foliage is down. But he didn't wind me. He just seen me because I might have moved or something, and they just saw me because the foliage is down, and it's a little easier to get picked when the foliage is down and you have a sky background. But as far as getting winded, that does not happen.
And you primarily saddle hunt, so you try to keep the tree between you and your primary location, or what?
Yeah, I've been saddle hunting since 1981. That's when I bought my first saddle, and 47 of the 53 book bucks I've taken were taken out of the same saddle. I still am using the same saddle I bought in 1981.
Oh.
I've made a lot of modifications to it, but with the saddle, you can shoot 360 degrees around any tree. It's always with you. I can prep 5,000 trees. I hunt them all out of the same saddle. I don't have to carry a cumbersome tree stand. I don't have to worry about the tree stand creaking when I'm shifting my weight for a shot. I don't have to worry about theft. I don't have to worry about somebody hunting my tree stand when I'm not there on public land. It's safe. It's safer. It's more comfortable than a tree stand. Basically, with a saddle, it comes with a safety belt. So when you're climbing and putting up your sticks or your steps or whatever, you got both hands free. If you're setting up stuff for a hang-on, you got to have an extra apparatus with you to prep the tree. So you got to have some sort of a climbing harness in addition to your tree stand. So your saddle is its own safety climbing harness as well as what you hunt from. So it's way more comfortable. There's just a ton of advantage. You can hide behind the tree in a saddle. You can move 360 around the tree and keep it as a hiding buffer so deer don't see you. And that's a big deal at a destination site. If you're setting up at a primary scrape area or a food location or like at an oak tree that's dropping acorns, you're going to have multiple deer in there. You may have 4, 5, 6 deer in there some evenings and all feeding for 20 minutes. And when you do, with a saddle, you can move around to the back. You're basically set up 180 degrees on the opposite side of the tree from the deer. When you're in a tree stand, if you're in a decent-sized tree, you have to have that tree stand kind of kicked off to the side a little bit so that you can shoot to that destination spot. Because if the tree stand was 180 degrees on the opposite side of the tree, you can't shoot around to the back side of the tree to the destination location. So you have to be kind of offset to the side. And then it's much easier to get picked when you're offset to the side because you're sticking out the side of the tree. With a saddle, you've got the tree as a 100% hiding buffer behind the trunk. And then you just swing slightly to the side to take a shot if you do get a shot at a deer you want to target.
That's what I made the switch last year after season. I got into the saddles and started practicing, and this is my first year hunting out of one, but it's like just messing with it in the yard and climbing. It was like, man, this is so much safer, and just automatically once I got kind of like used to it, I felt just so much comfortable, more comfortable. Like you wasn't, you're not worried about falling.
Tens of thousands of people have fell out of tree stands. Usually when they fell out of hang-on stands, that fell out when they're either getting into the stand or coming out of the stand. You literally can't fall out of the saddle. If if you're using the saddle the way you're supposed to, you can't fall out of it. It's impossible. Nobody has ever fell out of a saddle and sued the company. Ever. There's been tens of thousands of people fell out of tree stands. Anybody that's been bowing 10 years knows somebody that's fell out of it.
I've fallen out of a ladder stand before. Like it, as a kid, I was probably about 14 or 15 and fell out. And luckily there was a big mud hole in front of me, and that's what I landed in.
That's funny.
It was like 30 degrees, so it was kind of but it was about 2 foot deep. I went completely under. My dad actually saw me. I had my, like when I fell out, I went to come down like you're talking about, and I fell off backwards. And it was drizzling rain, like kind of, like iced over the ladder was, and I fell. Like my dad.
Good thing you were young and bulletproof.
Well, it probably scared a couple years off my dad's life, because like he watched me fall backwards, and he'll still pick at me, and I'm 37. I was probably about 12, 14. He's like, I don't think your rifle ever went underwater. You just stuck that arm straight up in the air, like, because I had my gun. And he's like,
how high was the ladder? I mean, back then, ladder stands were, what were you, 16 feet?
Probably? I was about 15, 16 feet, and just never turned, just turned and went to take that first step off of it and just fell over backwards.
Yep, that's where it is, going in and stepping out, whether it be a ladder stand or a hang on. And that's one thing about saddles, they're just so safe. You're always tethered to the tree. 100% of the time, you are never not tethered to the tree. You're facing the tree. It's a little awkward at first because it's different, but everything rope-wise is 6,000 pound plus test. So everything is way over-constructed as far as holding the person's weight. The testing that they do on saddles far exceeds the testing they do on tree stands.
Exactly. That's what I've got a friend that I've done a podcast with, and like some stuff on YouTube. Robert Wood tree saddles, and or wood hunting saddles, because he had to change it because the tree saddle name is like, you can't use the term tree saddle apparently. And
there's a trophy line.
Yep.
Trophy line has a patent on it.
Yeah, and they told him, he's like, okay, I'll change it, cool. But he's been using one for about since the early 90s, and his own and everything. That's what he talked about. He's like, once you get used to it, like, you're never gonna want to swap from it. It's just, and he was really like, I had a buddy that hunted with it, then I met Robert, and they both turned me on to him, like, hey man, like, you gotta try these. And it was like, it's when you can wear your stand literally in the woods, like, then it's like, it's the weight's not there, like you're, like, what is a climber weigh, if you're lucky you can get one that weighs 17 to 22 pounds, like, you're gonna spend big money to get that. And it's like, I have one of the original old man climbers. It's like the mesh seat or whatever.
Yeah, I know what old man is.
Yep. And it's one of the lighter aluminum ones. It's somewhere around 21, and it gets heavy after a while. Like, and then the thing, they're limited on where you can hunt. A climber is like, you got to find a tree. You got to turn a certain way. You got to
find a tree devoid of branches, and that's another thing. My saddle weighs about 2.5 pounds, and I can roll it up and put it in my backpack.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're hunting pressured property and you're hunting back in the security cover, and you carry a climber with your bow and with a backpack, you're hitting brush all the time. You're always hanging up on shit. Even with a hang-on, which is 7 or 8 pounds, you're hanging up on stuff because it's got a cumbersome frame.
Mm-hmm.
And you're dipping down to go under brush and stuff, and you're catching on stuff, and you're swearing, and you start sweating.
You're beating and banging the whole time, whether you're like, stuff's clanging off of each other. You're not quiet.
Yeah,
you're not quiet.
Absolutely.
And
also, you're limited to the trees. That's one thing about a saddle. It's a huge advantage. There's very few trees that I can't hunt with a saddle. I can hunt trees leaning up to 15 degrees. I can hunt 4-inch diameter trees. I can hunt 3-foot diameter trees. So the trees are not, nothing limits me. So if I find a destination location, there's going to be something there within shooting distance that I can set up at the destination location. I don't have to look for a tree 50 yards away to maybe one of the runways that are feeding the destination location and you're missing out on all the other runways feeding the destination location. I set up at the vortex of the destination locations so I can shoot to all of the runways that come into the destination location instead of setting up on one or two of them 40, 50 yards from it, because that's the only trees that are available that will accept what I'm hunting from.
That's what I was going to ask you when it comes to like a transition area of hunting. Well, like you got your trails coming in, and off your transitions, and it's like if you you want to find the destination of where they're headed, you're not worried about where they're per se where they're coming from. Is what you're looking for. Obviously I'm not talking about when if they're coming from their bed, yeah, you're going to want to be that destination. But like if you know where the feed's at, where they're going to feed, you're going to set up. Your pivotal point to setup's going to be where those trails come into that feed area.
Yeah, and you want to be able to pick the tree that gives you the shots to the most trails leading to whatever. On that transition route, you want to be able to shoot to the most runways. So with a saddle, you can pick the tree that's going to give you the most opportunities, where with a hang-on or a climber, you have to pick a tree that'll work for it, and a lot of times it may put one or two runways out of your reach because your stand just won't go in the tree that's best suited for that specific area. Where a saddle will fit in whatever tree you pick.
So, the area you're hunting right now, obviously, you got that. You're hunting it for a specific reason. You got a buck that you got targeted coming in, or what's your you got an idea already of what he is, or you just know there should be a good buck in there?
I don't really have a good buck that I'm after. I've got 18 cameras out, and the biggest buck I've got on camera is 115 inches. Nothing much of any good right now. I rattled in the biggest one the other day. I had him at 5 yards for 3 minutes. He came in to see what the confusion was, and I rattled him out of a cornfield. And I didn't shoot him because he was only 115. So right now I don't have anything that I want to shoot on cameras, but I'm still out there hunting. I'm still having fun. I've rattled in, I don't know, probably 7 bucks already this season. Three nice ones, 110 to 115, which is a nice buck for where I'm at. That's a 3 or 4 year old, because we're in really sandy soil. It takes sometimes a buck will live up here 5 years and never have 100 inches of antlers because we got shitty soil. Oklahoma and Kansas and those places shoot 2-year-olds very frequently have 125 plus inch racks.
I gotta.
Up here we can have 5-year-olds that don't have 125 inch racks.
I've got a.
Plus we got a lot more hunt pressure, way more hunt pressure. For instance, Michigan has about 340,000 bow hunters, and Kansas has about 24,000 bow hunters.
That's a big difference.
It's a huge difference. And plus, we're a 2-buck state. They're a 1-buck state.
See, it's like Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, northern Oklahoma is about the same as Kansas. I don't know where you're at in Oklahoma, but I scouted it. Guy flew me down, and I scouted some property in northern Oklahoma last year, and it was really phenomenal property. And he was only probably 20 minutes south of Kansas.
I'm about, I'd say, hour and 15 minutes south of Wichita. I'm north of Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I'm gonna actually send you a picture here in a second of a Oklahoma public land buck.
Oklahoma is a sleeper state. You guys are very, very lucky. Kansas gets all kinds of press, and northern Oklahoma is just as good as Kansas. You got certain areas. You got the big draws running through the landscape, like you get out there in central to western Kansas. And that's just real easy property to hunt. You guys have big-ass whitetails, but you're so far, because most of the people that go out of state to hunt are from the Northeast, where the big population is, up in the Northeast, New York, PA,
yes,
Ohio, Massachusetts. Those guys, a lot of those guys go out of state. but Oklahoma is just so far away. So usually they go to states like Indiana and Illinois and Iowa and Kansas, and because they're a little bit closer. But Oklahoma is a major sleeper state, and you better hope it stays that way.
I was pleasantly surprised because, like I said, I had come up here beginning of this past year, and right at the end of season, on January 15th is when season ends here. I came like I think I came like December. I came between Christmas and New Year's and hunted a little bit and scouted this property I was looking at leasing out in West Oklahoma towards a little town called Mangum, which is by the Alto Air Force Base. And it was like you're talking about with the draws and the little areas and everything, and it was totally different to me. It was how the heck I hunt this, and then I figured out like a bunch of deer jumped up and ran out of this one little bottom. I'm like, what the hell, and so it was different getting that. Then I didn't end up leasing the property. He hauled around about it and just didn't do it. Well, and then I'm like, well, it's 9 hours from home and da. So I guess everything. Then I had the opportunity to move up here with a job, and I'm like, well, now I would be 3 hours from that place I almost leased. And so I checked some public land out here, and it's got some really good deer. I just sent you a picture of a public land buck that's here, and I don't know which one number I sent it to one of the numbers there, and it's got some.
Oh, on a phone or on an email?
I sent it on your phone. Do I need to email it?
I don't know. Let me look. If you send it to 644-6067, I'm not going to get it.
Okay, that's the one I sent it to. You want me to send it?
Yeah, email it to me.
All right.
Send it to my landline.
Okay, well,
right now.
I have the other. I'll email it, but I have another number for you too. But I'll email it.
Okay. But anyway, it's really easy to hunt that draw type area because one unique thing about where we're hunting Kansas, it's mostly draws. There's prairies. There's a lot of prairie area. There's some CRP stuff, and there's quite a bit of ag. They don't grow a whole lot of corn out there because it's too arid, but they have milo and green fields, hay and alfalfa and stuff. Mm-hmm. But there's draws all over out there. Seems like every 3/4 of a mile or mile and a half, there's a draw that just meanders through the countryside. Basically, they're floodplain draws. Anytime there get excess water, that's the drainage. And over the thousands and thousands of years, you get those 100-year floods, and they just gorge out the landscape, and that's where those draws are. And the cool thing about it is those draws are full of plum brush, and they're full of hemp, and they're full of just tall weeds and cottonwoods. And as they meander through the countryside, there's narrow parts of them and there's wider parts of them, and there's little creeks. Because that's where the floodplains are. There's always a little creek running through them as well at the very bottom. And once all the crops are down, that's the only place where deer can really transition during daylight hours. They transition through those draws. So all you got to do is pick out a pinch point in the draw, where it narrows down the tightest, and there's going to be scrapes there, and there's going to be rubs, and park your butt in a pinch point and a draw, and you will have activity.
And that exactly what you just explained is like learning it here, because it's like you look at it and I'm like, and like, you'll see that email in a little while when you check it, and it's just different, and it's really cool, and just getting to see a different area that I'd have never got to. I wouldn't have made, like you said, I wouldn't have made the trip to Oklahoma to hunt, more likely. And it's a sleeper state that's really cool, and it's you got. They put a lot of emphasis on growing deer too here, like as a state. It's surprising, like they're little, like they have a 6 deer rule $2, 4 does or whatever, the max of $2, but it's like they push for you to shoot more does because their wildlife and fisheries pushes for shoot a few more does to get a better buck doe ratio. And it's like, which is surprising because a lot of, they don't manage them like that in the States. They just kind of like, whatever. So it's cool to see them do that, and the emphasis on and like wanting to grow some bigger deer. And
yeah, I'm looking at that buck right now. It's a 10-point. Looks like probably in the might hit 160. Might hit 160, maybe low 160s.
See, I didn't know how big that's way bigger than what I thought he'd be because I'm bad at judging one.
Well, I've been a scorer for 35 years, and that's he's going to be upper 150s, low 160s, somewhere in there.
So
he looks like he's got 25-inch beams. His brows are probably 4.5. His twos look like 8. His threes are probably 9, and his fours are probably 7. And he might be in the mid 150s. Okay, you may be correct. He's got at least a 20-inch spread.
I would, like I said, I don't know anything about scoring him. I was just like, man, he's big.
Oh yeah, he's very impressive, especially, and they're always more impressive when you get a picture at him from the back.
Yep.
They always look bigger from the back than they do from the front.
Exactly. That's a story of life right there. Yeah. Yeah. But
it's a beautiful buck. Yeah.
That's in, like I was getting at earlier, that's in a little area. Like I said, I went into it because I was like, where would I be? And it's like I'm not in I haven't seen any other sign of human activity in there. And he's obviously the dominant buck in that area, but I've got I've probably got 5 or 6 80 to 100 inch, 6s and 8 points. And in there. And it's like, they gotta say, the old like cedar fence post back in there past where I got that picture of him is one of them that's like toward a heckin' back, and I was like,
yeah, we see that in Kansas quite a bit.
Yep.
Fence posts that they look like hourglasses.
Yep.
They've been rubbed on for so many years. The center of them's worn right up, almost worn in half.
I looked at that and I went in that area and went in the back and I found that. I'm like, okay. And they got a high rack little 6-point that he's where I was at the other day. I actually saw him get up from his bed, but I probably could have took a shot, but I was like, man, I'm gonna wait because I want to kill something a little better than that, but so, but it was him, it was just right there. It was like I could have got him the other day with, I was like, man, if I mess around and mess this spot up this early in the season, and
you don't want to do that.
Yeah, and
you don't want to do that.
I figure
you got an oak tree in front of this buck that looks like oak leaves on that
yes, sir.
Tree.
Yes, sir. And it's got he's come through there usually about when that picture is 4 to 4:30 in the morning, about every other morning. So
yep.
I figure he's probably not traveling too. He's not too far from there. I'd say before where he's bedding down. I just hadn't located it. But I also don't want to
hold off on him until late October.
All right.
When his testosterone gets a little bit higher and he has to
when he starts looking for love in all the wrong places.
A little bit because he's thinking more about breeding, and then he might make some mistakes in the daytime.
All right. So I could talk all night with you, but I know we both can't do that, and so we'll probably start winding this one down. I've enjoyed it and would love to do it again if you would be interested, and
sure.
Just pick your brain and get as much information because I've learned doing a podcast like this. I think I've learned more than my listeners because it's like getting to I don't know if they've learned anything, but I've learned a lot because of getting to talk to
tell your listeners to check out my YouTube channel. It's Eberhart Outdoors, and I've written 3 books, instructional bow hunting books, and I've got a 4-set instructional DVD series that I did in 2005. There's no kills it. They're 2 hours long each, and they're season specific. One's on postseason, one's on preseason, and one's on in season. And then the other one's about archery. It's not really a hunting one. It's about archery mechanics. But I write for deer and deer hunting. I write for a lot of magazines, and I've been a sales rep in the hunting industry for 30 years. I was a buyer in Michigan's largest sporting goods store. I was the archery buyer for some years. So I've been fortunate enough to be in the industry, but I've been able to. I could purchase land if I wanted to, but I prefer hunting public land and knock on doors for free permission properties. And because that's what I always tried to help people with, that's what I'm going to continue to do, is just hunt, public and free permission properties, because I want people to be the best that they can be, and I like sharing my information.
That's what I was going to say.
I've got a lot of that on my YouTube channel. There's a lot of information.
You do. It's amazing, like what all's on there. Then they have you have a workshop coming up, don't you?
Oh yeah, yep. I do 4 whitetail workshops every spring. They're in either March or April. They're 2-day events. I've had several people come up from Oklahoma, actually, from to Michigan. Mm-hmm. So they're held up in central Michigan. They're 2-day events. First day is out in the woods all day, and then the second day is it's an all-day seminar. And I go over every aspect of everything to do with hunting whitetails. And it's everybody has a good time. It's not overly expensive. It's I think $650 for a 2-day deal, but you got to pay your own room and board. And so if anybody's interested, shoot me an email and I'll send them all the information.
Yeah, because that's what I think. I just pulled it up, and you tentatively have your date set for March 18th and 19th, or April 1st and 2nd. April 20th.
March 18, 19, April 1st and 2nd, April 22nd and 23rd, and April 29th and 30th.
Yep. Then it says tentative. That's your tentative site stuff. Your website, they can go to it at Eberhart's Whitetail Workshop is what I'm at on it. And
yep.
That way there's so much that they can.
Or if you just
Google your name
Johnny
is what
Eberhart, I'm sure it would pop up.
Oh, everything pops up,
Yeah.
So that's one thing I wanted to make sure, people are listening, go check out your website. Google your name, you'll see so many things that it's kind of funny. Like after the fact of you saying something, I know how I've done it with different people that have. They say something and you're like, wait, something you said, it's just, you've overlooked it, but, the average guy, has overlooked it, but it's so simple. It was like, why the heck didn't I think of that? When it comes to whitetail hunting.
Yeah.
A lot of
whitetails, I relate a lot of things whitetails do to what humans do. And if you don't some people try to make
overcomplicate
more complicated than it is. If you people ask me, why do you use a doe decoy instead of a buck decoy? I say, well, typically when I was single, if I went in a bar, I was looking for women, not men. Just some things are just simple. I mean, if I wouldn't, me as a human, as an older human, I feel like I'm a little bit more educated than a 15 or 16-year-old guy. And, I know I would feel very comfortable walking through some small rural town at 3 a.m. in the morning. I'd walk through that at night, no problem. But I have enough security precautions to know I wouldn't walk through, South Chicago in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. because I know it's a crime-laden area. Well, deer are the same way. When there's areas that are heavily pressured areas, mature bucks just don't move much during daylight hours when they're vulnerable. They move primarily after dark, whereas mature bucks on TV fantasy land and in zoo-like settings, they'll move in the middle of the day because they've never had any negative consequences for all of their actions while they were growing up in the middle of the day, are moving out into these open areas. So, deer have the same, if there's a lot of pressure, they move differently than deer do that don't have any pressure on them. Just like we wouldn't move in South Chicago in the middle of the night, whereas we would move in a small rural town where we know it's a safe place.
If there's no repercussions for your actions, you're going to act different than if, something's going to happen to you for it.
If there's no repercussions for your actions are going to remain the same.
Exactly. So if he's if he's never been shot at, he's going to continue the same thing. If that human scent has never presented a danger, he's not worried about it.
That's right. You know it's dangerous walking through South Chicago, so you're not going to do it in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
But you know it's safe walking through some small rural town in the middle of the night, so you wouldn't be afraid to do it.
Hell,
Deer the same way.
Exactly. And that's a pretty good way of summing it up. Well, so I'm gonna ask you something I usually like to close with. What would be your top 3 things you would tell somebody that was getting into, they want to get into whitetail hunting, like they want to kill a mature deer for their area. I want, mature for their area, because that could be like you said, 110, 120 in some areas, and it might be 160 in others. What would be your top?
I'm glad you said that, because that's very true. Some of the best hunters in the country are guys that are hunting in New York and Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Michigan on public land, and they're killing 2-year-old 90-inch 8-points every year, because it takes more skill in a heavily pressured state on public land to kill a 2.5-year-old buck than it does to kill a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old on TV fantasy land. Way more skill. So if I had to pick 3 things, the first thing would be, in order of importance, security cover, security cover, security cover. Always generate all of your thinking and all of your locations around security cover. Mature bucks in pressured areas like to move along edges of security cover or through security cover where they've got quick exit routes. 1 or 2 bounds, and they're in security cover. They don't have to worry about getting shot. So prep all your locations with security cover in mind. Number 2 thing would be scent control. Hands down, having a proper scent control regimen it's the biggest thing in bow hunting, other than learning how to bow hunt, like the security cover thing I just said. Once you get to the point where you don't have to pay attention to wind, that is a major game changer. So scent control is a big, big deal. And the third thing probably would be the saddle deal. To me, hunting out of a saddle is just a big advantage. Being able to have more tree options to hunt from, being able to shoot 360 around the tree, not worrying about people stealing your stuff. There's just so many advantages over tree stands. My kill statistics went up dramatically when I started using a saddle in 1981, and then they went up again dramatically when I started properly using scent lock in 97, 98. When the first 2 years I used scent lock, it took me a couple years to learn how to use it correctly, because when you look at the hang tag on a scent lock garment, don't go by what they tell you how to care for it. Because scent lock, in my opinion, doesn't, on their hang tag, the proper care is not correct. So if you want to use scent lock and care for it correctly and use it correctly, send me an email for my scent regimen, and that's the proper way to store it, use it, and care for it. So scent control, hunting from a saddle were total game changers to me as far as my kill stats. And then I've always been a security cover guy. In pressured areas, you have to gravitate to security cover, because that's where the other hunters that are hunting the open stuff have pushed the deer. Those deer go back into the security cover. Or if they do move in the daytime, they have quick exit routes. So those three things.
That's three really good things, because your third one there with the saddle, like I said, I've noticed this is my first year doing it and practicing and everything with it, but realizing what you can climb, and it's like, it's, so I told my dad, I was like, I mean, I can literally climb if it's 3 to 4, 5 inches round, like 4 basically, you can get in it. There's no, it doesn't matter, and you can get around limbs. Like, you don't have to it's got a limb in the way, I can't hunt it. No, I can go up there and rehook, adjust, and boom, I'm around a limb. And it's
a lot of times you can actually use a limb as one of your steps.
Exactly, and that's what I utilize the one step with the aider, and it eliminates, so you can eliminate so much gear,
Oh, big time, yeah.
It's like and
even a lot of the saddle guys, they carry way more. A lot of saddle guys are gearheads. You see a lot of YouTube stuff on saddles, and they're carrying all kinds of gear. I've got mine down, and mine is streamlined. My saddle with my tree tether is 2.5 pounds.
Oh, that's
everything.
Yeah.
You still have to carry sticks to get up the trees on public land, but I use tethered one sticks, which I think they just got a shipment of tethered one sticks in. They weigh 15 ounces. So you get a one stick and you put a 2-step aider on it. You got a 1 pound stick with 3 steps on it. So you get 3 or 4 of those, and you can get up 25 feet. I also hunt pretty high. It's pretty rare I'm below 25 feet to my feet.
Okay, and that's what I was going to say too, and that can vary. Like, we can get into a whole other thing with that. Like, vary depending on location of where you're hunting. Because of the canopy that's there, like how green it is. The greenery and everything. Like, try not to.
Yeah.
And
early season when you got a lot of foliage, you can actually hunt a little bit lower because you got a lot of background cover. But I lived in a northern state. Yeah, foliage starts to go to hell about 1st of November. It's pretty much gone. So basically, you got a sky background, so you need to get up there out of their peripheral vision. It's very important.
But when we moved here, I looked at I was laughing. I told my wife, I was like, man, like, we actually might have seasons now. In South Louisiana, it's just, it might be 90 degrees, then the next day be 50, then the next day be, 90 again. Christmas, you don't know what you're going to get at Christmas. It could be 30 or it could be 90, like the same week.
Yep, I get it.
So it's like, usually we don't lose everything and start dying until like season's almost over. So like a lot of times you don't have to worry about it. You always got some type of cover and foliage and everything. But with that, I'm gonna start winding this one down. So this was our podcast with Mr. John Eberhart. Thank you for coming on, Mr. John.
Okay, and if you would do me a favor.
Yes, sir.
Send me a URL to this podcast when you get it done, and I'll post it on some Facebook pages. And for everybody listening, hey, good luck this year. Hope everybody does well.
All right. Give me just a second.